I'm going to encourage everybody to turn on their cameras so we can see each other. I see that we've got Mike Flint, we've got Abigail. There we go.
Much better. Thank you.
Much better. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jay. We're going to just wait maybe 2 more minutes. I'm curious, Libby, Abigail, did you guys get an invite with a Google Meet link?
Yeah, I've had both.
Yeah. When you open it in Calendar, it has a Google Meet link, and it's only in the body of it. When you scroll down, can you see the Zoom link?
Oh my gosh. We're going to make sure that we change that. I'm curious. Yeah, I'm going to ask Rochelle. Rochelle, could you send out a quick notification to everyone via LinkedIn that it's the Zoom link, not a Google Meet link?
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks. What do you think, Brian? Should we start?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, excellent. I am very excited to see Libby and Abigail. Libby, you're coming back for more, having spoken with us a month ago. And Abigail, are you and Libby in the same network?
Yes. So Libby and I know each other, and she highlighted that this was happening, and it sounded interesting. So that's how I know.
All right, all right. I'm going to share my screen. We'll get started. And I guess I really want to have this be interactive, so I'm going to ask everybody to put into the chat where you're logging in from, so we can see where we're here, and we'll see that the chat is actually working. So I'm leading by example here, telling you that I'm coming in from Mill Valley, because the session's going to be really interactive. Actually, Libby, probably more interactive than the one you were in. Quick, just technical request. If your environment suddenly gets noisy, if you could put yourself on mute. Other than that, we're going to be all able to speak in this session. And what do we got here, chat wise? Oh, looks like I posted in a private message, so I didn't lead by example. Here we go. Wow, Abigail, you're from Queens. That's where my mom was born and where I visited my grandparents for years and years. And let's see. Oh my gosh, I'm displaying my speaking notes on the screen. That's very weird. So I'm going to stop my share and start it over again.
Abigail, are you a tennis player since you mentioned you're right near the US Open?
Not with any skill whatsoever. No.
Okay.
It's the fun part that's good. So I'm a tennis junkie myself.
All right. I think I've gotten the technical glitches out of the way. Can everyone see the title slide for our program? Excellent.
Yes, sir.
All right. So the goal for today is to actually help you all and learn from each other about how to design offsites that actually reset team dynamics or develop leadership within your team. So first thing, I'm going to take you through how we're going to do that. Quick introductions of us and Gel. Unlike last time, Libby, we're going to actually present a case study so that we can use that as a framework for the various things, and we can continue take that through. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing some breakout conversations, but actually with this small group, we can just do it in this room. We won't have to break out. Then we're going to go into a framework that you can take away from this to, approach your own offsites. And then sum up, there is going to be an invitation we make to you to actually speak to us one-on-one. As a Zoom like this, really, there isn't enough time to get into the details of each person's situation specifically. I think Brian can actually drop in a meeting link if you actually do want to have a one-to-one sometime after this. Okay, first, a little bit about me, a little intro. What you're looking at is actually me way back in 2010 on an Oracle racing boat, part of the America's Cup team practice. But my bio is, in addition to loving sailing, I started in corporate America, IBM. I did some startups, much to the chagrin of my mom and my dad, who loaned me money for business school. I did this big pivot and went into pro sailing for a little while, founded Group Experiential Learning in 2003 down in Auckland. And we've been doing this, I've been doing this consulting and designing offsites since 2003. Fun fact, I live part of the time in San Francisco and part of the time in Aspen because I'm a part-time ski instructor in the winter. And that's something that Brian and I have in common. And Brian Swingley, who's in the room as one of the co-hosts, is a team member from GEL who runs many of our offsites and runs our coaching practice. So for Abigail, Libby, Michael, although Michael actually, I'll introduce Michael briefly. Michael's actually been a participant in a GEL event before. But for those of you who haven't been out on a sailboat, let me just give you a sense for what that's like. And if I can talk over the sound of the wind, the boats you're seeing are sailing in my hometown in San Francisco. We've done corporate programs on these boats. These are like 35-foot boats. These are smaller ones where we did a offsite in Newport, Rhode Island, where we do a lot of our programs. Out in San Francisco, we've done corporate programs for Bank of America, for US Trust, and even Target stores out there with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background. Lastly, before we all start talking, I'll just do one summary slide on what we do. We are leadership consultants. Our focus, or what we're known for, is the experiential components that we build into all of our offsites. We also help organizations with assessing their teams, figuring out dysfunction and how to deal with it. And as I mentioned, Brian leads our team coaching practice. Our whole reason d'etre and our mission is to help people get sustainable breakthroughs and higher performance out of their teams. But instead of me telling you what we do, let's talk about your experiences. We're going to have this as a discussion right here in the room. The instructions are let's think for a moment about an offsite and what happened at that offsite, good or bad, what was really memorable. I would invite you to think hard about an offsite that didn't live up to your expectations, because it's easy to remember good memories. Oh man, that was awesome. Happy to hear about those. But I'm interested in hearing about ones where it didn't work and what were the team dynamics that you were experiencing. So I'll give everybody a minute to think, and then I'll ask for a volunteer to share with the group. All right, I see eyes up. Abigail, do you want to start us out?
Sure. I attended one offsite where the leader who brought the team together led people on an exercise for brainstorming that had no relationship to the business at all or to anybody's roles. And they brought in a speaker who was a guest speaker that spoke about things that just, none of it provided any cohesive sense of unity or problem solving, sharing. And it was really weird. None of it came together. And I didn't understand why they had spent the money to do it. So that was a negative one.
Uh-huh. I'm curious, was it a large group, large team that was there? And would you say your experience was probably shared around the water cooler? Man, that was a waste of time.
Yeah, it was probably about 25 people. So not too big, not too small. I think everybody was unclear on why they had the offsite. This particular leader, that seemed to be their style. It was like in the first few weeks that I worked there. So for me, it was really more odd maybe because I hadn't been exposed to this person before, but they seemed to lead by chaos. So I guess it was brand consistent for them.
Huh. Were you with that team a long time? Did you mesh with the group, or was the group just natural culture of being a little disconnected?
So I stayed for a long time. That particular chaos leader left within 10 months or so. So things moved along much better after they left. I think their style I don't think leading by chaos is super helpful. I'll just put it that way.
Am I right that Libby has dropped out He's no longer in the room?
He's just not on video at the
I'm
moment.
here. For some reason, my video is cutting out. It did this yesterday too.
Got it. All right, Libby, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I attended an offsite. We called it a blue sky day, and we had probably 1,500 people that we split into smaller groups. And the idea was that these were sales people and sales leaders, and the different product leaders were supposed to, or silo leaders were supposed to do workshops with them to get their input about what the product leaders could do to improve the products or make it easier for the sales team to sell the products. And we didn't end up doing this ever again, which I thought was a lost opportunity. But most of the workshops, the product leaders just said, we know what they should do to sell it, so we're just going to get up and tell them. And rather than making it participatory and getting input from the sales leaders, they just told them, like, here's the best way to sell my product. And so that didn't work. And then I was with the tech team, and we actually had so many people who wanted to give feedback about the proprietary systems that we were using that we split them into two groups. And the group I was in, we made it a real blue sky day where they could suggest anything. And we encouraged them to use their imaginations. And they were saying things like, I want a transporter beam to do blah, 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 crazy off the wall stuff. And we would say, a transporter beam, how great. How would you use that? And asking those follow-up questions, we got great answers that helped us get insight into what we needed to do to fix the technology, even if we couldn't build a transporter beam. The other room, the leader said, if they said something crazy like transporter beam, the leader just said, come on, be realistic now. And that just shut the conversation down entirely. And so none of the groups that were there got good positive feedback from this. And as a result, they just decided never to do it again.
Interesting. Wow, that is really an interesting situation. Are you still with that company or?
I'm not with that company anymore.
Got it. All right.
Yeah.
How about Mike? You want to, I know you've been part of one, but can you tell us about an offsite in another life?
Mostly just, I think, militarily, we've done some really interesting things in the middle of nowhere, but I don't know that there were business alignment applications like the ladies were just sharing with. But other than that, my time with various gel events have been where I've been.
All right. Great. And just for introductions, Brian, Rochelle, and I are like the core team members for GEL. Mike has actually been a participant. He is a professional pilot, ex-military, has flown a couple of presidents on Air Force One, and he occasionally, we bring him in to help with our programs, and he's been a speaker for us. So he's not really a plant, but I want to explain, I appreciate Mike being here. I'm wondering, Brian, do you want to share as well, since we're a small group?
Yeah, sure. What was coming up for me is when I was coaching college sailing, our offsites, I guess I would call them, are our spring training trips. We would take the team during spring break, and they wouldn't get to go home for spring break. We'd take them to another destination and do 5 to 7 days of training. We'd take them, typically, we take them to the nationals venue, wherever the national championship was going to be competed in that year. We take them there. So that was some good insight into putting them in the place of where we want them to perform eventually. But the way that I was thinking about it was, as a younger coach, I had very packed agendas and full 2-day two-a-day sessions, sometimes 3, I think, with meetings in between and debriefs, and then a video session. And that's all well and good, but I learned over time that it was the space in between and having that relaxed vibe for the week that was more important. And we were allowing the relationships to develop during those downtimes. And so as I got older and more experienced, I would purposefully start the debrief 15 minutes late because people were chit-chatting and hanging out, and they don't get the opportunity to do that at school, especially because I was coaching at the Coast Guard Academy. Every minute of their day is taken up. And yeah, I think that applies here. It's not a true offsite. It's not a business offsite, but I think that's applicable here.
I'm curious, I hear something in what you've said, but and also that ties to what Abigail said. I'm curious, Abigail, in your experience, that offsite where you had a leader leading a brainstorming that didn't really connect, what was there time set aside in that offsite to try to pull the pieces together, or was it a jammed agenda and
No, it was, I think it was very poorly executed because nothing seemed to link together or no one seemed to really understand the point of any of the topics really. You said to think of one where things didn't go well, so I picked the doozy.
yeah, no worries. We're going to get a chance to talk about good ones too. I think this is a good setup for the rest of our conversation. And I just realized for this conversation, I should have stopped sharing my screen. Note to self. We've set the stage. I'm going to give you a little experience that we've had that was, yeah, I've remembered this one ever since. Case study. This was a tech client in the Bay Area where the right hand, in this case, the right hand woman of the senior vice president, this senior director, called us up, and we had uh, a diagnosis meeting where she described what she thought some of her team issues were, and that she felt an offsite and she wanted help putting an offsite together that could allow the team to address these things. Our second strategy conversation was with her senior vice president, who actually said to me several things. That number one, I don't know why people even want to do an offsite. We don't need it. Everybody is smart. They know what our mission is. But if they want to have an offsite, that's fine. They can tell me about it when they get back, which I thought was very funny. And it was not unique. I've actually had a number of clients, senior execs, want to send their people on an offsite without attending. Luckily, his director and we had a conversation with him during that meeting, during that 45 minutes, where she introduced that there was probably a lot of things that he didn't know about the team that could come out in an offsite. It would benefit him as a leader and the team as a team. And we got started. And our first thing that we did was an anonymous survey where we asked 5 questions of everyone. And the very first question we asked were, what are our top 3 objectives for the next planning horizon? And this group came back with 18 different top 3 objectives. And I wish I could also say that was unique, but alignment is a common problem. Executives think everybody knows where we're supposed to be going, but in this group, they had 18 different ideas of what were top priorities. We also, that survey asked questions about things like what is the elephant in the room that you guys never talk about, that if we were to talk about it, it would make the offsite worthwhile. So we found out that there was an extremely low level of trust, and the group was, everybody was identifying lots of dysfunction. So we planned an offsite, which involved a half day of sailing and then a surprise drop off on an island here in the Bay Area called Angel Island, which is a state park. They got a map and backpacks and tents and some food. And we're told, here, go find your campsite. You've got to get it set up and you've got to get it dinner made before it gets dark. You've got 2 hours. We're not going with you. Figure it out yourselves. That was pretty amazing experience for them. And in our feedback, to harken back to what Brian and I think Libby mentioned it in the chat about time for getting to know each other, people in the debrief on this said that the hike, the 45-minute hike, was hugely impactful because they were walking next to someone and actually got to know them. They talked. It's not a rigorous hike. The other thing that we did is we gave everyone a deck of cards that night, 18 cards that had their top 3 objectives on them or in the mix, and we had them sort them into piles. After reading all 18, what are the real top 3? What do they think they are now? And what are ones that are definitely not? There's no way that's really a top 3 objective. And then a third pile was, these things are not, but man, I think they're interesting, and we probably should talk about them during the offsite. And by design, knowing that there was this misalignment and these 18 ideas, we had carved out 45 minutes in the agenda specifically to talk about the non-top threes that were interesting. I think one of the things you should be getting out of this case study is that it's very formulaic that we build in addressing the areas of dysfunction at the same time that the offsite had business sessions about the customer and about positioning and the like, process, all that. All right. So that I'm introducing that case study. I'm curious, does anybody have any reactions to that right off the bat? No? All right.
It sounds
Then
so familiar, Jay. The 18 top 3 goals, all of that. And I love the card trick. You mentioned that on the last call, and it's great.
Yeah. All right, Libby, I promise in future sessions, we're going to be talking about team coaching. It won't be as redundant. But let's have another discussion here. Just take a look, read these things on the screen here. These are what we've heard from either the right-hand man or woman or the senior VP, or I would imagine executive coaches like Brian hear things like this. And I'm wondering, on your current team, Abigail, Mike, Libby, which of these would you quietly admit about your team? Or is there another thing, if you were talking to a consultant about your team, what might you say?
I feel like the smart people but poor collaboration is one that I was working with earlier this year. We had
Yeah.
5 senior leaders and 5 top priorities.
Wow.
Yeah. I think I've worked with people on teams that each one of these would have fit. The one that stands out to me right now is the team doesn't really work as one.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, we definitely hear all of these. And I am ashamed to admit, but I've got to admit it. When I was in corporate America leading teams, I think I was on teams or leading teams where every one of these secrets that you don't want to admit was the case. What I want to introduce is this concept that underneath all those problems, there are mindsets in a team, especially when you're asking the team to take time away from work. Upper right, you've got that leader like the senior VP who doesn't know what he doesn't know and is so confident, maybe we don't even need an offsite, or probably more along the lines of Abby's leader, really confident that we're going to do this great brainstorming activity. Our speaker is going to be wonderful and we're going to do great things in the offsite. And maybe the bottom half are people who had to go through that meeting. Abigail, yeah, I think it was Abigail that had that example. We have people like the right-hand woman in our case study who was hopeful. Let's actually use this offsite to address stuff. But what you have to deal with on your team are the people at the bottom. Some people are just in the space of things are never going to change. They were just resigned. And other people are active detractors. As you're planning your offsite, you want to have in your mind that not everybody is going to be in the same place as you. And maybe there's some things that we can do to shift people into a mindset where change is possible. Let's see. Our next discussion earlier, I think it was Libby, you started to talk about things that you guys did in one room that was different than what the product managers were doing with the salespeople in the other room. So let's think for a moment about this. And we've already been talking about barriers, but what's something that you've tried that you've used to overcome barriers? Again, maybe Brian, why don't you start in the world of, and maybe you want to introduce your background as a coach too, so folks
Sure,
understand.
yeah. Sorry if that wasn't clear. I used to be, and hopefully will be again someday, a college sailing coach. Taking a little hiatus from that while I have very young and many small kids at home. But yeah, I think what was coming up for me here, Jay, was on a team, sometimes people's ego can prevent them from learning from each other. And I think actually Libby mentioned that in that slide about we have a lot of smart people, but nobody's aligned and maybe no one is willing to learn and really think through someone else's opinion, but also how are they doing it better than maybe I am, and what tools and techniques could I take from them. But we fostered a environment where whoever was performing the best that day, we all got to quiz them, right? And in sailing, who was going fastest, who was executing on the race course the best, who was getting off the starting line the best, and then we would call that out. And our goal was for everyone else on the team to get the information from that person. So then hopefully that person's not the same every day, that everyone overall is raising the bar. And that just became the norm, right? And I think it was a nice way for everyone to learn from each other and to make it, yeah, like I said, normalized and standard.
Cool. That's really cool. And I'm going to ask other folks to talk, but I might share one learning as well. The bottom line thing that I heard, Brian, from what you're saying is that what can get in the way is people's egos. They don't want to learn from others. And what you did as the leader is actually a practice, a debriefing practice, where the folks who were doing individual things well shared their mental frameworks, how they were doing it so that the group could learn. All right, who wants to go next? Libby, Abigail, Mike, anyone?
One of the things that I often do is I will have people do quiet reflection time first and then share out. That tends to give everybody an equal voice in the room, as opposed to if you just start the conversation with a conversation. The people that are more comfortable speaking aloud tend to take over the room. And sometimes people will defer to the CEO if they're there, and then they censor what they would say, rather than once you've got it on a sticky note up on the wall or something, everybody can see everything and there's less of the self-censorship.
Huh. Wow. Those are great things there. I actually want to probe a little deeper. You said once things are up on the wall in a sticky note, that's actually a tool that we've used. I've used it in my world as a management consultant, but also in team consulting, putting things up on the wall. Can you tell me more about that? I'm wondering if you had people contemplating and then putting up topics that should be talked about up on the wall for everyone to look at before, or to prevent a CEO or someone from taking over?
Yeah, we're often focused on strategy. What are we trying to do this year? So I would have people write their ideas on each idea on a sticky note, and then we'd do that silently for 5 minutes, and then we'd take 2 minutes, put them all up on the wall, and then we'd just have a reflection moment where everybody stood and looked at it and said, oh, all 5 of us came up with the same thing, or, oh, that's interesting. We weren't thinking we were ready for that yet. We need to have a conversation about, are we ready for that this year, or does that need to follow some of the other higher priorities for this year?
That's fantastic. That's really great. Abby, I made you think about a bad offsite before. Has this conversation brought up a good one with a tool that you used?
Yeah, I think the most effective ones, at least with the audiences that I've worked with, is where they understand what the clear purpose of it is. There's nothing faster for the groups that I've worked with to losing them is if they feel like there's not a clear purpose in doing it. So is it mainly to get people to work better together as collaborators? Is it mainly to plan out strategy? And I think to that point, getting them materials ahead of time. So whether that's pre-reading or sort of a brainstorming activity before a week or so before the offsite even begins, those are the things I think that I have seen be the most effective and have people show up from the first meeting of the day and being engaged and really interested in having a conversation.
Huh. And you said pre-reading. I'm curious, and it seems like the tool to overcome a barrier is having everyone clear on what the goals are for the offsite itself. Was that communicated 3 weeks in advance, week in advance, or at the first session, or was getting everyone aligned around the purpose part of the prep for the offsite?
Yeah, part of it is actually in the planning. So if we're going to work with a group of leaders, it's before we even decide on a date, it's what are we trying to get out of this?
Huh.
And then
I'm
refining it a bit
curious.
closer.
Yeah, Abigail, what's your background and your role? Were you an internal consultant for the leaders, helping them make change, or?
No, so I worked as a program manager with strategy and operations and chief of office teams. And so we worked closely with whichever executive or function that were with them.
Got it. Got it. Huh. Yeah, this is really good. Here are some of the barriers that we've heard. I actually need to advance my slide here. And it sounds like many of these we all are aware of, where there's an agenda focus. Let's just get through what the leader wants to get through, and it's not very clear. Abby also mentioned activities, having a speaker that was disconnected. I would call that's my third bullet, having an activity that doesn't actually transfer or provide any value to the business objectives. A problem that didn't come up earlier was a leader being disengaged and not really participating. I know in our case study, our senior VP wasn't initially on board, but during and after he was very engaged. But without the leaders being involved before, during, and after an offsite, I don't think it's going to have a great result. And the most important bullet, I would say, is the last bullet, which is what do you do during the offsite to actually carry any of the agreements that the team makes on what we're going to do differently? What are we going to start doing? What are we going to start doing? What's something we do that we should do a whole lot more of? Those decisions and discussions need to take place, but it also needs to be actionable. I actually just talked about a bit about what enables breakthroughs, but going back to the sailing video that you saw, we always make experiential a big part of our offsite. And we recommend that the first morning or the first day be something along the lines of what Libby was saying, getting everybody involved, making it a level playing field, not the CEO or the extroverts taking over. We recommend designing some type of an experience that gets everybody equal and in the frame of mind to have those conversations. You bet. Basically, we've already mentioned you have to make space in your offsite agenda for candid conversations and for reflection, and probably a difficult thing to do internally that really helps. And again, I'm blowing our gels horn for a moment, and that is the way that you facilitate your offsite such that the team dynamics work that needs to be done is woven through the business and tied to the business. To basically sum that up, I think doing an upfront engagement exercise, like a survey or interviews that has the team themselves identifying things that should be on the agenda, is a home run play. You need to have that experience that gets people in the right frame of mind, work in that hike or the time for people to actually connect. And a little bit of this is redundant, that you got to have working sessions that tie all of it to the business. Libby, you didn't see this in the last one. I think we've improved our slide here about our recommended approach that I've gone through. Diagnose, then design and execute, but have powerful debriefs and you need to create a plan for afterward. Okay. Let's see. Brian, by any chance, did I skip over any type of sharing activity? I think we've covered it.
No, I think that's it, Jay.
All right. Then I think I'm going to do the commercial now. We talked about a case study. Abby and Libby shared about some past offsites. Brian, myself, some of the other consultants that are on our team, we love to talk to people about what's going on in their organization, and we do it for free. We're happy to set up a call, and you guys can basically tell us what you want to dive into. Is it a debrief of a past offsite? Is it helping with thinking about a future one, or speaking about your team, what's going on with your team? And again, shining a spotlight on what Brian is an expert in is applying team coaching to the corporate environment. And I think Brian's may have already put this in the chat. That's where you can set up a call. Great. I'm just gonna go to our conclusion at this point. I think the rest of my slides were somewhat redundant. I would actually, I'm sorry, I should have let this one go on. Oh no, I'm sorry. I thought I had a slide where we were reflecting. I'd be curious as to takeaways. What are some things that you guys are walking away from this with? Any ideas that are powerful? We really like to get some feedback on if we were to do another meeting specifically about offsites. Is there an area that we missed? Is there an area that we should spend more time on? Any thoughts, takeaways, or suggestions for us?
Jay, I'll say a big takeaway for me is I can't wait to learn more about a blue sky day. I love that concept. And yeah, I want to learn more about that, basically. So thank you for that. We always learn from folks that show up at these. So I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
we do. It's funny, Brian, one of the things that you mentioned actually brought up vivid memories for me, and that was about ego getting in the way of change. Brian, in his world of coaching, was coaching individual sailors on boats that fit one person or two-person teams. I often race on boats where there's 6 people on board. I've raced on boats where there's in the America's Cup, 18 people on board. Ego is huge. I've had experiences where people won't take any suggestions about how they could do something better because they own their position and they're really proud about what they know. I don't know if this phenomenon is true in business so much, but I have been in meetings as a product manager where the engineers would poo-poo any ideas that the product marketing managers had and just said, hey, stick to your knitting. We'll focus on what's in the box. You focus on the brochure. So that's what your comment brought up for me. Anyone else, suggestions or takeaways, something that landed on them? Michael, maybe?
Just listening to others, I can tell you that I know that, again, my background in the Air Force, they train and retrain, and that's all we do unless there's a war going on. But actionable items, I was hearing that in the discussion. One of the rotations we would go through that was really important is everything, whether it was good or bad. Every time we'd go for a training flight, we used to joke that if we went to war with the state of California, we were going to win because we knew every inch of it. And that pre-brief was very important to get engagement. I was listening to a couple of the speakers here say that they were having some challenges with potential engagement of the smaller voices. One of the things we had on our checklist prior to going flying was to make sure that everybody got their voice in the room, that they had to say what was it that they were expecting to hear from the leaders if they were in a junior position, and what they should expect, the leaders should expect from them. And then we would copy, paste, and then in the debrief, go right back to it and say, did you get what you were expecting? And if you did not, why not? And where could we better this next time? Because obviously decision making, and when you're in an airplane going low level at 600 miles an hour, the mountain comes up very quickly. Expectations are important. And to your point too, Jay, ego in an airplane is as present as ego on a sailboat. And so we surprisingly in the Air Force learned to park our ego, even though we're filled with a lot of ego that we're trying to save lives and including our own. So yeah, I think there's probably, the more I think about it, there's probably things that I could analyze and bring over from my past trainings that would assist in an offsite like this. And I know you've worked heavily with Army Rangers to see those kinds of learnings as well. So anyway, I
Oh no,
appreciate being.
that's great. And actually, you just reminded me, we didn't spend an awful lot of time focusing on debriefs. The folks who missed out of this meeting, we had, it looks like about 10 people who were unable to make it. Everyone's going to get some follow-up emails with a link to the recording, but also we send out a monthly email that has like a quick hit, a quick something you can do or bring that will actually help you with your team. This month, the actual focus of that is debriefing. And I think one of the things that we touch on is how the Rangers do an after action review. In the Navy, they call it a hot wash, but very rapid debriefing that doesn't point the finger at who did something. So the focus is not on who's to blame, it's on what happened and how do we fix it next time. With that, I think I'll thank you guys all for taking the time, and I'll invite you if you do have a thought of how we can improve it, especially me personally as the primary speaker. I'd love any feedback. And actually, I do have one question for the group. One of the things I've noticed in doing these is I can't read the chat comments while I'm presenting and speaking to folks. I'm curious, do you think I should encourage people to actually, especially when it's a small group, to just share what they're going to share in the chat here with the group? What do you guys think about that?
I think that's hard to do once you get a larger group.
Yeah.
What I've seen some presenters do is have someone from their organization monitor the chat. And when they're switching slides or pausing at the end of a topic, that person will say, hey, we've got a chat from Jay that says blah, blah, blah. Jay, do you want to tell us more about that? And pull them into the conversation that way. Or, Jay, we've had 10 things in the chat with questions about post-event surveys or whatever.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Livy, I don't know what your billing rate is, but you can send me the invoice for the consulting. That was huge. We're going to do that next time.
Yeah, it'll pay for a new camera for my laptop, apparently.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all. And I look forward to hearing from you and staying connected. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jay.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.